Hi, I'm Kristin Clark, and I'm here with Renee Ferguson, my friend and fellow coach. Renee is a life coach, and what she does is she teaches busy women to go from frustration and overwhelm to clarity and balance, which I love. And as you guys all know, I work with high school and college students, helping them to figure out their career path, give them confidence so that they can learn to do something that they love as far as their career. So Renee, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Kristin. I'm excited about the conversation we're going to have today.
Well, I can talk about strengths all day long, so I am too.
Well, and it's funny, so many times when I'm working with clients or just speaking with women about their goals and their frustrations and just the way their days are going, when we really boil it down into the things that are frustrating them, they're usually either things that are not priorities that they shouldn't be working on, or it's something that it doesn't excite them, it doesn't give them fuel that passion, and it's probably one of the weaknesses that you would work with them about.
Yeah,
So
actually, and I got to tell you, that's the reason I got into this work, Renee, is I was in a corporate job, and my whole goal now first and foremost, I got to tell you, I love working. I've always loved
yeah.
working much more than I like school. I started scooping ice cream at 14 years old.
Oh
And
my
that was my second job. Before then I babysat forever.
yeah.
And really kind of it messed up my school because I was like, well, this is a lot more fun where I can go and make money and,
Right.
yeah. So
Right.
love working. And my big goal was to hit the VP level in marketing, which I hit. And I got to a point where I just hated getting up in the morning. And my husband looked at me one day, he goes, what is wrong with you? This is so not like you. And, yeah, and I was like, I just don't even know. I mean, I was going to the doctors going, I'm exhausted all the time. What is wrong with me? There's something wrong. And they're like, you're fine. And I'm like, no, I'm not fine. There's something wrong.
Right.
Well, yeah. And so I know what you're talking about when you're talking about clients that they're just like, "Ugh, I don't want to do
Oh
this."
yeah. Well,
Yeah.
in working with fellow business owners, and there are so many things, as an entrepreneur, there are so many things that you're trying to do and wear all the hats and juggle everything. And there are things that just drain us.
Yeah.
And they're usually because it's not something that, even if you are skilled in it, if you're not passionate, if it doesn't give you that natural energy, if it's something that just sucks your life away, or that thing, if you're not quite sure if it's that thing that you just keep putting off and keep putting off and keep putting off, it's probably something that you need to outsource. It doesn't mean that you're not qualified, that you're not great at what you're doing. You just need to outsource that one thing or find another way to do it. And so many times I think that we feel like we should be able to do it all. Or if we have skill, we think, well, I can't outsource this. I need to be doing it. And I loved the example that you gave in the blog that you wrote for my site this week, because you were talking about your friend who was very skilled and passionate, but yet it was draining her. And that's what you're talking about. That if it's sucking away time and energy that you could better spend doing something else, then you might need to take a second look at it.
Oh, for
So when
sure.
you're doing the testing for Clifton Strengths, um, how does someone, because it's something that I would like to potentially have some of my clients do and work with you on. So how does somebody go about testing to find their strengths and weaknesses, and what does that whole process look like?
Yeah, and I will tell you that first, I'm going to level set everybody on what Clifton Strengths is because sometimes people get confused about what the assessment really tells you.
Okay.
And what it does is there are 34 themes of talent, and that's when you take your report, you can either get your top 5 or you can get the full 34 report, and it will tell you about your strengths, the areas that you do your best and that you show up the best. And these strengths are innate. They're natural talents that you were born with. And and typically people are working within their top 10 to 12 strengths. So it's really interesting to get these results and to hear about those things that you do so well, because I got to tell you, Renee, most people don't even realize they're doing them because they're so innate to them, right? They're like, well, everybody thinks this way. And the reality is they don't.
Right.
One of the strengths that I always pick out when people have it is futuristic, where they're like, when somebody says they have high futuristic, I'm like, okay, how far into the future do you see? And this isn't like crystal ball. It's that they're thinking about 10 years, 20 years, 30 years down the line. And I'm like, that is so amazing. And they're like, is it? Is it really? And I'm like, guys, I work within like a 3 to 4 day window.
Yeah.
That's where I play well. So I'm like, it is special because you're the type of people I look at to go, what's out there?
Right.
And my strengths get a bunch of people together and we get people to that spot. So I rely on people, that have those types of skills to be able to kind of point me in the right direction. And then I'm ready to go. So these talents are all about when you feel energized and happy. Those days that you feel like you're in the zone and you'll look down and you're like, oh my gosh, it's like 1 o'clock and I haven't even eaten yet. And,
Right.
the day flew. Typically those days you're in that zone or you're working within your strengths. So your strengths energize you, that make you happy, because when you're doing something you love and that you're really good at, it feels good. You feel strong.
Right.
So for people to take the assessment, super simple. It's an online assessment. It takes you about 30 minutes. Don't let this scare you. There's like 170 questions.
Oh my
But
gosh.
yes, I know, but they go by really fast because they time them at 20 seconds. And they do that so that you'll have just an instant response. And it is your guttural response, right?
Because I
This is
overthink those things. I mean, we've
right.
probably all taken multiple assessments. I've never done this particular one, but I often overthink the questions.
Right. And this doesn't let you. And by the
Yeah.
way, yes, you need to take the assessment.
I
We need
do
to
need
get on
to take
that.
it. I do need to take it.
Yeah. Well, and I'll tell you, back when I told you about that corporate job that I just was hated, I had probably one of the best things that could have ever happened, and I got the boot. We had a new president come in, and head of marketing is always first to go. So I was like driving home, smiling the whole way, going, "Yay!" It was one of those that not their fault, not my fault. It just wasn't a good fit, and
Right.
I was miserable, right?
Yeah.
But during that time, I met a lady that had just been certified with Clifton Strengths. And when she explained my report to me, and she was, it just became so clear to me what was happening, that Renee, was trying to play in the strategic world. And that's not how I'm built. I'm not, there are 8 strategic themes, okay, that are out of the 34, and I have like 1 in my top 10 and the rest are all at the bottom of my list. So I was trying to be this great strategic mastermind, and it was making me miserable and drained every day. And
Right.
I've had people ask me, they're like, well, weren't you nervous? When have you been nervous to go to your boss and say, I need help with strategy when you're leading a marketing, organization? And I was like, that's not what brought me to the party. What brought me to the party, what got me all my promotions, is the fact that I can get a lot of people moving forward quickly and having them enjoy the ride. That's what I
Yeah.
do well, right? So it was an opportunity for me to just kind of take a step back and go, wow, I need to really make sure that I have people that have all these strategic skills around me so I don't have to do it.
Well, and I think knowing, because we've probably all met someone who has said, I'm a whatever, so I can't do this well. Or, knowing our strengths and weaknesses, knowing things about our personality, it's not a crutch. It's not a reason that you can say, well, I can do this or I can't do that. But you understand where you are at your best, what you're going to get energy from. There may be something that you have to do that's a small part of your job, that's not one of your strengths, but you're going to accomplish more. You're going to go farther when you're focused on your strengths, on your things that suit your personality well, and you allow those around you to do the same. And you work
Absolutely.
better as a team when you can all find those spots where you're working the best and use that for the benefit of the team. So
Yeah.
it's not something about saying, well, that person can't do this because they're a whatever. No, it helps you appreciate also. I think that, okay, someone does see well into the future and I don't. That doesn't mean that there's something wrong with me. That's a gift and a strength that they have. I have something else.
You hit
And
the nail on the head, Renee, and that's
yeah,
part of the strengths discussion is do what you do well. Roll in the mud in that. Have fun. Pick the
right.
things, right? It's like raise your hand for those things that you do well. Like let's say you have to volunteer at the kids' school and
Mhm.
there are all these different jobs. Pick the one that you're really good at. And it's funny because I hear some people where they're not really good at the executing type stuff.
Mhm.
So they feel bad to give that to somebody else. And it's like some people love to execute. They love the hands-on getting
Right.
it done part, right?
Right.
So you go, it's not a burden to them. That's where they want to be. So it's really honoring their strengths to reach out to them and go, "Hey, would you take this part on?" So
Yes.
yeah, it's all about partnership. It's about understanding what you love to do, understanding what people around you are good at, and then partnering. It was a big monkey off my back when I figured out that my strategic skills were low, quite honestly, because I was like, well, that's why this is all happening. So I understood it. And the beauty of it was I had a solution to it. And that was farm that out,
Yeah.
get somebody else to
Well,
do that.
and that's where you said somebody asked you if you wouldn't be uncomfortable going to your boss about something. You obviously were doing very well in that role. There was a reason, like you said, that you had continued to get promoted and continued to move up. So it's better for you and for your team and for the business at large for you to go to your boss and say, I could really use some help looking for this, or give us the guidance. Where would you like our team to take this? We can get it rolling for you, but what do we need to do?
Or Renee, I could have went out and hired a business coach, and just
Yeah,
said, you know what, this is a gap that I have. So I could have very
right.
easily farmed that out myself and came back into the business and, and had somebody to bounce those ideas off of. So
Yeah,
yeah, there's so many ways that you can, make sure that you don't have to work within your weaknesses. Um,
right.
and let's talk about that for a second. So for instance, when I said I was low and futuristic, I can think about, ooh, having grandkids. And I can think about, oh, in 10 years, when I retire, these are the things that I'm going to do. It's all about, I don't play well there for the long term. I can
Mhm.
dabble, I can jump in and I want to jump right back out and get into the space that I do well. And it's really
Right.
about, here's a stat. I'm kind of a stat girl. I like my facts.
Okay.
And this one I think is just kind of sad, to be honest with you. It's Gallup is always looking at people in the workforce and their level of engagement. And what they've found consistently is 30% of people really around the world, but the 30% is I'll keep it to the US. 30% are engaged with their work. So what does that mean?
Only 30%?
30%.
Oh my god.
Okay, and that's not because of COVID, that's been going on forever, and in fact, it's gone down a little bit, with COVID, which you can understand, but
Mhm.
that means 70% of people out there working 30, 40, 50, 60 hours a week are not happy. They're not engaged with what they're
Oh
doing.
my gosh.
I know, and I'm like, that doesn't have to be that way.
Right.
Yeah,
That's
so
sad.
it is sad.
Well,
Yeah.
I think sometimes people get disillusioned with their job. even if it's something that they love and something that they wanted to do, because maybe they are being tasked with those few things that just really drain them. And so they end up thinking, well, I really wasn't cut out for this, or it's not what I thought it was going to be, when it's really more about specific tasks than the job as a whole. And
Yeah, let me give that example of Catherine that I have in my blog that it might help crystallize for people.
okay.
So Catherine is a fractional CMO, so she helps companies with their marketing. And for the longest time in her business, she was helping people like post on social media and all these executing type things, coming up with the pictures and the graphics and all that good stuff that we all know
Okay.
we have to do.
Right.
And that was the part that really drained her. And when she took her strengths profile, she had 9 out of her top like 12 strengths that were all around strategic thinking. So she plays well in that space where it's about, ooh, what if? How about if we, and that's where she does well. So when she figured that out, she was like, oh my gosh, I've been doing the wrong things in my business. She actually now will go into a business and she helps them with their marketing strategy. Okay. And
Mhm.
she will require for them to either have somebody on staff or hire out those pieces that we just talked about, the posting on social media, building the website. Those are the things that she doesn't enjoy. She doesn't do well. She doesn't play well there. And she just does strategy. And now she's flourishing. She's doing awesome, loves what
Oh,
she's doing. Yeah. So it's sometimes it's a tweak. Like for her, that was, I mean, it
right,
was a major tweak, but she's still doing the same job. She's just doing different things within that work.
right.
Yeah,
And she's excelling in what she's doing because she's not also trying to do all of those things that fall within her weaknesses.
absolutely.
What a great example.
Yeah.
Well, when we're looking at the strengths and weaknesses, and you said a total of 34, is that right?
There are 34 strengths.
Okay. And when you're looking at when you get your results back and you're looking at everything, you said there were 4 different categories. Do you find that most people are very strong in one of the 4, or what if you had some strengths in multiple ones, or what does that look like, since I haven't actually done the assessment?
It runs the gamut. And I would tell you more than not, people will be in more than one strength in those top 5.
Okay.
Um, yeah, because, the strengths all work together, which makes it really cool. So let me think, I've got arranger, activate. I've got a couple influencing, a couple relationship building, and one executing. And my executing is actually my top strength. But I will tell you, for me, I play best in the influencing side. I'm really good at
Oh,
pointing
no.
fingers and telling people what to do. So
Okay.
yeah, but in a very good way. I mean, it's a strength. So it usually comes across where people are like, okay, I'm going to get it done because Kristin asked me to get it done.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, so it's really, and I don't want to get too caught up in the domains, because I will tell you, like, even in my top 5 strengths, just looking at the strengths one-on-one or by themselves, I learn something new about them, Renee, all the time, where
Oh, do
something
you?
will, yeah, something will happen and I'll get thinking about it. I was like, oh my gosh, that was my arranger. And this is what it came across like. And so people that are high in arranger, just to fill in some gaps when I'm throwing these terms out there, and educate people, and it may sound like them, so it might be fun for them. So people that are high in arranger are really good at figuring out all the people that you want to bring into a group to finish a task. They're like conductors. They're really good at taking lots of activities that are going on and keeping all the balls in the air. Um,
Okay.
and they're really good at, kind of figuring out if you have a problem or a challenge. They're usually on page like 6, 7, or 8, while everybody else is still back at 1. So very quickly they're figuring out next steps,
Okay.
um, which our strengths can also be our weaknesses. And this this was one of the things, the lady that did my strengths the very first time, she opened up my report and she goes, "Oh, okay then." And I was like, wait, this is supposed to
That
be
doesn't make you
fun.
feel good going into it, does it?
Right. Yeah. But what was interesting is she's like, "You scare people, don't you?" And I was like, I do scare people, but I have no idea why.
Oh,
She
how
goes,
funny.
"Let me tell you why." And it happened to be that,
That's funny.
yeah, and it was that arranger, she's like, "You're on page 6 or 7." And that's my first strength. My second one is activator. So I have a kind of a need for speed. We talk about it all the time in our networking group that we're in, that I don't need directions. I just
Mhm.
like to go. And if I go and I make a mistake, it's no big deal. I learn from it and I keep moving. So I enjoy the, just going, getting it done. Don't sit around and talk about it. Let's go. Right. So
Yeah,
when she was explaining those two strengths together, she's like, "Kristin, you're on page 6, 7, or 8, and you're getting people moving. You're telling them,
right,
okay, let's go." And she said, and they're going, "Okay, I'll do it because Kristin said so, but I don't know what I'm doing." And so I
right.
scared people.
Yeah, or
Yeah.
they just need, time to process. You feel like, you're staring into a room of folks that have deer in the headlights expressions, and it's really just that you are moving so quickly with it and moving ahead, and they need time to process it or time to think about it, or they've got questions about it, and, I think that's a big part of understanding your team and understanding not just your own personal strengths and weaknesses, but also those of your team, those of your spouse, those of your children. Knowing how we work and how we can work together. If I'm talking to one of our boys and I know that one of them needs to think a little bit longer and process it and then come back to me, I'm not going to be as impatient, and I'm going to understand, okay, I'm going to say this and I'm going to give them time to process.
You've got that
So,
completely right, because I will
yeah.
tell you, when you do understand it, you're right. It's not a fight. Like at my house, when I'm overactivating, somebody
Mhm.
will tell me, they'll just go like, "Mom, you're kind of overactivating." And I'll go, "Oh, you know what? They're right."
Yeah.
It's not an insult. It's, "You're kind of doing your thing. Can you slow it down?"
Right.
And it is nice. And you bring up kids, a lot of times I'll see parents with like a kiddo that is high in competition. So they
Mhm.
have to win. Like winning's really important to them. More
Okay.
important than most people, right? It's like that's their sole goal, is to beat the guy next to them. And a lot of times you'll hear parents go, "Quit it. You don't have to win all the time." These people do. That's like how
Right.
they're driven.
Right.
And when you understand that, now it's a different conversation. You don't have to be frustrated with the kiddo. Now you go, "How can I use that to my advantage?"
Right.
So things like, we're going to the grocery store. Here's my list. If we can get this done in 30 minutes, you can pick out something you want. Now all of a sudden it's a game. They're
Mhm.
trying to win, and it's a win-win for mom and it's a win-win for the kiddo. And you're honoring their strength, right? Because
Right.
yeah,
It's not about manipulation. You're
no,
not manipulating them. You're just taking a regular situation and trying to make it more enjoyable by considering everybody's strengths and
yep,
considering what you can do for them.
yeah,
So that's, sometimes, as far as the enneagram or some of the different things that I've heard some negative comments, and people have said, well, you're just using that information to manipulate me. And it's not about manipulation, it's about working together. And whether it's a family member or someone at work or a team member at church, volunteering, whatever it is, you're talking to people on their level. You're trying to not assume everybody thinks about it the way that I do, or that they're going to come into a problem the way that I do. Understanding that we do see things differently and we approach things differently, and appreciating those differences.
absolutely. And I think that's the biggest part, is not only appreciating, but honoring by asking those people to help you, or,
Mhm.
to work together. I mean, it's the greatest partnership opportunity. And,
Yeah.
you'd brought up some of the other assessments. which I love because I think they all really have their place for sure. One
Mhm.
of the reasons I fell in love with the Clifton Strengths is that they use words that you understand. So they're meaningful words, like
Okay.
activator. When I explain that, you're like, oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense, right? That you want
Right.
to move quickly.
Right.
Arranger, that I'm like arranging things quickly. Ideation, those people just love the activity of coming up with ideas. So they're kind of your go-to people if you get stuck and you're like, we've tried everything. And they'll go, oh, really? Hold on. Have you tried? Have you tried? So they love that activity. There's people high in empathy that can actually feel the feelings of other people. And I've had people in sales use that to kind of figure out the temperature of the room. So, and go, ooh, I went down this path and the temperature of the room changed. I'm going to go down a different path. But it's also, you can also see that strength working really well in like as a doctor or as a coach or a
Right.
therapist, right? So you can use it in a lot of different ways. But I love that they're words that you go, I get what that means, because the whole concept of strengths is now, once you understand them, you can raise your hand and say, I want more of those.
Mhm.
And I personally don't feel like a lot of the other assessments kind of give you that opportunity. Like they say you're an ENTJ and you go, okay, they're right. Now what?
Right.
You
Yeah.
know? And I always have to go, what is ENTJ again? What does that mean?
I
So
do too. I can never remember. I always have to stop and think when somebody tells me, they're doing that and this is what they are, and I'm like, what is that again?
I know. And I'll go back to, they all have their place and they all, and I'm sure if I had a coach take me through the
Mhm.
Myers-Briggs, it'd probably be a different situation. But I just think the Clifton Strengths is so much simpler in its the way they explain what those strengths are, and that you can experience those. So that's why
Yeah.
I love it. Yeah.
Okay. Well, so many of the examples that we've talked about today have been work related, but I also coach a lot of moms that have stepped out of the workforce for a while to be at home, but they're volunteering and they're doing all these different things. Their kids are in all the different activities. They're trying to manage the house. They're volunteering. They're doing all that. Don't you think that this is valuable, not just for working relationships? We talked about how helpful it can be for families, but don't you think that it would be very beneficial for those moms at home, even if they've stepped outside of the workforce, to help them where they are right now, but also to consider maybe what they might want to do in the future as they're getting ready to re-enter the workforce?
Absolutely. You can use strengths at every moment of your day, I promise you.
Mhm.
Because, even for you and I, we work, but we have our home lives as well.
Right.
And we want to show up well for our family. And to really understand your strengths, I'm going to go back to my activator, where my kids, we've talked about this enough that my kids are like, there she goes, that I'll get out of the car in the middle, we're going to the mall and my husband will be like, honey, it's this way. And I'll go, okay. And I'll just start heading that way. So, knowing it and being able to use your strengths at home are just as important.
Mhm.
Um, I had something that went through my mind when you said that. Shoot, I will find it again. Oh, I know. When I work with my student clients, we do actually a family strength session where we sit down and we talk about all the strengths of each person in the family. And I got to tell you, Renee, we have so much fun because you get these conversations, you're talking about the dad and everybody else will go, oh yeah, that's what he does, that here's what he does.
Okay.
Um, so our strengths absolutely come out at home for
Okay.
sure. And everybody around you will recognize them once they put a label to them. That's the beauty of this, is now it becomes a language for you to be able to share with each other as well. And that's where this gets really powerful.
Okay.
Does
And
that make
not
sense?
labeling in a bad way. Having that label is not a negative, it's a
No.
benefit, because we understand how the people around us tick and how we tick. What makes us go and what gives us energy and what is going to drain us. It doesn't mean that you never need to volunteer for that thing that is not a strength. Maybe it's not one of your lowest weaknesses, but sometimes something has to be done and you do it. But you don't want to focus all of your time there. You don't want to constantly volunteer for those types of activities.
And here's the deal. If you have a choice, when you understand it and you have the label, you understand the label, now you can choose to do the things that you're best at. Now, yes, we all have those things we have to do. I mean, it's just trying to be proportionate about it and choosing to do those things that you do well as often as you can.
Mhm.
And, trying to avoid the things that you're not that great at,
Right.
or figuring out a way to use your strengths to handle that maybe in a non-traditional way. So I'll give you an example. I've got clients that are high in what we call input. And what that is they really love researching and, just digging deep into a subject.
Okay.
Well, sometimes, like my friend Catherine that we talked about, 9 of her top 12 are strategic thinking themes. So how do you think she relates to people and creates relationships? Well, one of the things she could do is use her input. So if somebody, like for me, who doesn't like doing that stuff, I'll be like,
Mhm.
oh, friend that has high input, I'm really interested in what that keto diet's all about. And they'll go, oh, I know all about it. And they can tell you all about it. And that's the way she builds relationships. So even though that's not one of her strengths, she has tools to be able to do that.
Okay. That
Does
makes
that make
sense.
sense?
It
Yeah.
does. It does.
Yeah.
Well, and if you think about it, there are people that you routinely go to for certain types of things,
Mhm.
information about certain things, because they're the one that does all of the research and they know everything about whatever topic you're asking them about. So we know people have these strengths. There's nothing wrong with identifying that and them being your go-to person for certain things, and that's helping you. And it's also
And
benefiting them because they're getting to do the thing that they love and getting to share that information.
yes. So I would tell you, anybody that wants to take this assessment, I'd be happy to facilitate that. However, you can also go to the Clifton Strengths website, and it's a Gallup website. So if you see the word Gallup, you're in the right place.
Okay.
Gallup, by the way, is a world-renowned research firm. It's located up in Omaha, Nebraska, and they have, like, the Clifton Strengths program is within their organization.
Oh,
Yeah, so you can choose to go to that. If you would like somebody to take you through your results, I do that all the time. Love doing this. Like I said, I could talk about strengths every day, all day long, and it would not bore me at all. I love it because I love seeing the light bulbs go off. I love
yeah.
seeing the shine in people's eyes when they're like, "She gets me," because I can explain this stuff, and they're like, "That is me. That's so me." And it's just a lot of fun for people to really start to understand themselves better. And that's why, Renee, too, I chose to work with young people, because I was like, man, if we could get these young people knowing about themselves early on, then
Right.
because I don't want that 30% number to stay where it is right now, where people aren't engaged in their work. I want to see that number go up. And if they know what's going to interest them and excite them, let's
Mhm.
get them down that path when they're first starting out.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Instead of, changing their major 5 or 6 times and, college taking 6 or 7 years instead of 4, or heaven forbid that kids go through all 4 years, finish a degree, and then end up in a career that they just can't stand.
Right. It's just not a good fit.
Yeah.
And they don't know
Well,
why.
Kristin, you mentioned earlier that in your college counseling that you do, or the college prep that you do, that you will offer this to families. If a family wasn't doing if their kids aren't at the college age yet and they're not quite ready for that, do you offer the Clifton Strengths assessment and coaching for families just independently of some of your other services?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I will tell you, Renee, I've focused on this high school and college area because when my kids were going through, I really realized that they weren't getting a lot of coaching. People were helping them get into college, but they weren't helping them figure out why they wanted to go and what they wanted to do.
Right. Okay.
So that's really where I focused on, because I just saw a big gap. But Clifton Strengths is so, gosh, you can apply it to so many things that I can figure out ways to apply Clifton Strengths to how you study, how you, I don't, all the things. So family dynamics, you name it. So yes, the answer is always yes. I have a lot of people go, Kristin, I'm 45. I hate my job. Can you help me? I'm like, absolutely. Let's just sit down and talk about it. Yeah.
Yeah. I recently spoke at a work. I'm a military spouse, as you know, and I recently spoke at a workshop for soldiers and spouses where the soldiers are preparing to retire, transition off of active duty. And I can see where this would be huge for them. Well, for the husband and wife, for two reasons. For the soldier, because he or she has been doing a particular thing for 20 plus years, and now they have the opportunities to do anything. And it seems overwhelming because it seems like you can do anything and you can, but there are things you don't want to do. And having an assessment like this sometimes can just help you narrow your focus a little bit and help you pinpoint things that you might be most interested in. But also for the spouse, so many times military spouses put their careers on hold just due to all the moves, and maybe they're in a career that they have to be certified in each state, and by the time they finally go through the certification process,
they're moving again, right?
Up from the next move.
Yeah.
So I would think that going through this as a couple, at that point, when you're preparing for a career change, not just military folks, but anyone who's preparing for a big change or transition, that it would be very helpful to go through this, not just to do the testing, but to have someone like you to sit down and walk you through it and explain what it means. Because sometimes when we hear our weaknesses, your feathers can get ruffled a little bit, and you feel like, because none of us want to be weak in anything, but having someone like yourself to walk through it with us would be such a huge plus. So how would someone get in touch with you to be able to do that?
Well, my information scrolling across the bottom with yours. So I want people to be able to reach out to either of us. So you can get to me at kristinclark.com. We can get to Renee at reneehferguson.com. So that if you're a busy woman, and we're trying to get you from frustration and overwhelm to clarity and balance, reach out to Renee. A great life coach. I love talking with Renee. She's just a calming force, and I'm not. So I always like having that other people kind of balance me out. But yeah. So we're here to help, guys. Anything you need, and we're both very free with our time. If you've got questions about any of our courses, any of our programs, please reach out.
Well, thank you so much for chatting with me today, Kristin. I've enjoyed this, and I think this is a conversation that people need to hear, because when we're talking about goals and things we're trying to achieve, when I'm working with my clients, it's easy to get frustrated and to get overwhelmed. And so understanding more about yourself, what makes you work, what gives you that energy, what's going to keep you going, because some of these long-term goals that we set for ourselves, your motivation is going to wane at some point. And so understanding more about yourself and why you want to achieve those things and where you need to outsource and find help so that you can keep going is huge. So I really appreciate your time today and what you've offered to the folks that I work with. So thank you for that.
No, thank you. And I'm sure we'll be getting together again soon.
Sounds great.